on the northern outskirts of the forest, where the peaceful song of birds gives way to ominous whispers of the wind, lay the Moon Lake. This place, shrouded in grim legends, was considered cursed by many. The locals tried to avoid coming close to the lake, especially during the full moon, when, according to lore, dark forces awaken and begin their work. In ancient times, in a village near the lake, people knew that the Moon Lake was not just a place for fishing or swimming. They believed that in the depths of the lake dwelled ancient creatures, imprisoned there long before humans appeared. Centuries ago, the local residents had made a pact with these beings to protect themselves and their families from calamities. But every pact has a price, and the price of this one was steep. Every full moon, a sacrifice was required. If no sacrifice was made during the month, the village would descend into chaos. People would disappear without a trace, livestock would perish, and homes would burn to the ground. In fear and panic, they would offer sacrifices, hoping the creatures in the lake would be appeased and leave them alone. Time passed, and the village grew deserted. People fled, leaving behind their homes and fields. Only a few remained, whose roots were too deep to leave their homeland. But even they knew not to approach the Moon Lake during the full moon. In one of these homes lived an old man named Sergei. He was the last of his kind who remembered all the legends and secrets of this place. He knew that it was his ancestors who had made that terrible pact, and he felt responsible for what had happened in the village. Sergei always tried to stay away from the lake. He avoided speaking of it and did everything possible to convince new residents of the village to stay away from that cursed place. But one night he had a strange dream. He dreamed of his grandfather standing on the shore of the Moon Lake. In his hand, the grandfather held an old, worn-out book covered in dust and cobwebs. His eyes were closed, and his face showed concern. Sergei realized that this dream was not just a vision but a warning. It was as if his grandfather was calling him to the lake, to the very book that could reveal the secrets of their family, and perhaps help lift the curse. The next morning, as soon as he woke up, Sergei felt an irresistible urge to go to the lake. He didn't know what awaited him there, but something inside told him that it was his duty. As he approached the shore, he felt a chill penetrate his bones. The water in the lake was as black as the night itself and reflected the moon like a huge mirror. It seemed as if the lake itself was watching him. Sergei stood there for a long time, staring into the depths, until he noticed a strange movement at the bottom. The water began to bubble, and soon an old, algae-covered book surfaced. It was the same book he had seen in his dream. Sergei slowly approached the water and extended his hand to take it. As soon as his fingers touched the cover, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. Memories flooded over him like a storm. He saw how his ancestors had made that terrible pact, saw the sacrifices offered during the full moon, and saw how the village had plunged into darkness. But along with the memories came understanding. Sergei realized that the only way to lift the curse was to break the pact, but for that the final sacrifice was needed, a sacrifice that was to be himself. Sergei understood that he had no choice. He opened the book and began to read the ancient incantations. A wind rose around him, the water in the lake started bubbling, and the moon was obscured by clouds. Suddenly, ancient, terrifying creatures began to emerge from the depths of the lake. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, and they slowly approached Sergei. Sergei did not feel fear. He knew that this was his destiny, and he was ready for it. As he continued to read the incantations, he felt his body beginning to disappear, dissolving into the night. The last thing he heard was the whisper of the creatures, "We will free your village, but you will stay with us forever." Sergei closed his eyes and accepted his fate. As he vanished, the wind died down, the water calmed, and the moon shone again in the sky. The Moon Lake, which had terrified the village for centuries, now became an ordinary lake. The curse was lifted. The next day, the villagers discovered that the Moon Lake had become clear and clean as never before. No trace of Sergei was found, but everyone knew that he had made the greatest sacrifice to save them all.